Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
So today we're diving into a pretty interesting source. It's excerpts from a YouTube transcript.
Right.
And on the surface, it seems like just, a simple conversation. But when we started digging in, we found it's packed with insights.
Absolutely. It touches on personal preferences, but also these bigger societal observations, even sources of inspiration.
Exactly. So our mission today is to unpack this chat and see what it tells us about, well, everything from nature and weather to media and personal stories. It covers quite a range.
And what's really compelling, I think, with sources like this is how these individual sort of personal observations can mirror much larger trends, macro changes reflected in the micro.
That's a good way to put it.
So we'll look at how specific points here give us a unique angle on things like, say, urbanization, climate change impacts, and even the psychology behind motivation.
Okay, sounds good. Let's start where the conversation did, which was with this really strong connection to nature and a preference for getting away. The person speaking clearly loves mountain holidays. They specifically mentioned Himmel, staying in lodges there.
And what struck me wasn't just, mountains are pretty, which they are, obviously.
Right.
But they really highlighted wanting to experience how the locals live, how they cook, how they clean, that kind of detail.
That points to something deeper, doesn't it? Like a desire for real immersion.
Exactly. It's about seeking authenticity, I think, a genuine curiosity beyond the usual tourist stuff.
Yeah, more than just relaxing. It's about connection. And this appreciation for nature, it gets really specific when they talk about trees.
Oh, definitely. They talk about loving trees.
Like really loving them. How being around them feels significant.
And this is where it gets quite profound, actually. They describe looking at a tree and feeling very alive.
Very alive. Wow.
Yeah, it's not just a casual, nice tree. It touches on something fundamental. They link it to the history a tree embodies, the fact it gives us oxygen, that feeling of being refreshed.
They even compared it to meditation, right?
Yeah.
The best feeling.
They did. Which lines up perfectly with concepts like biophilia, that innate human draw towards nature, and all the research showing green spaces boost mental health, reduce stress.
So that feeling isn't just personal sentimentality, it's a documented psychological benefit.
Precisely.
But then there's this contrast they bring up about their hometown.
Right. The lack of trees there now.
They mentioned it's become mostly city and buildings and shops. Fewer trees than maybe there used to be.
And that observation just perfectly sums up the challenge of rapid urbanization we see everywhere. Cities expand, green spaces shrink.
Yeah.
And they were very clear they wished there were more trees back home, linking it to these really strong benefits.
What were those again?
They said more trees protects you from so many things that it's so much better for your health. And even the idea of having fresh food, fruits, vegetables growing right outside your home.
Those are huge benefits. Protection maybe from sun, pollution, health, local food. It makes you think of trees not just as nice to haves, but the essential city infrastructure.
Totally. It moves way beyond just aesthetics. It's fundamental to well-being, especially in crowded places.
And that shift they observed from more trees to fewer kind of leads naturally into their thoughts on another environmental aspect.
Yeah.
The weather.
Yes, the weather discussion was interesting too. They talked about their favorite weather growing up.
What was it?
Cooler, wetter seasons. So November, December for winter, and September, October for the rainy season.
Okay.
They specifically like the cold, the chilliness for being outdoors walks, playing. It shows how climate shapes our childhood memories, what we enjoy doing.
But then right after that nostalgia comes this really stark observation about change.
Yeah, a big shift. They said the weather has changed drastically recently.
How so?
It's become hotter and humid. That word drastically really stood out.
And they didn't just notice the change, they had a specific cause in mind.
Yep. They pointed straight at global warming, said it's been really bad lately.
That's powerful, isn't it? Connecting a personal, everyday feeling like it being hotter directly to this huge global issue.
It really is. Climate science gives us the data, but stories like this show the real, tangible impact on people's lives.
And it affects them very practically, too. They talked about how this weather impacts working.
Right. They mentioned their hometown weather, being in India, is really only comfortable for working around December.
Just 1 month, basically.
Pretty much. The rest of the year, very, very hot, a lot of humidity. And they said it makes it hard to feel your best.
Which makes total sense. It's hard to be productive when you're constantly battling heat and humidity.
Exactly. It highlights the real economic costs, the personal productivity costs of rising temperatures. Climate change isn't abstract. It hits your comfort, your health, your ability to get stuff done.
A strong reminder of that connection. Okay, so shifting from the natural world to the mediated one, the conversation also went into media, TV specifically.
Yes, and this part was revealing too. A key thing was this TV documentary they saw young, one that was really inspirational for them.
Oh, yeah. Which documentary was that?
It was about the rapper Eminem, Marshall Mathers. Watched it when they were quite young.
Okay. And what was it about that film that stuck with them so much?
It was the portrayal of his struggles, his poverty as a kid, as a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
But what really shone through for them was his determination, his drive towards his dreams, his goals, despite all of that.
That classic underdog story, but it clearly resonated deeply. So the takeaway wasn't just about music success.
Not at all. They felt it proved you can make it big no matter what obstacles you face, even coming from a small town or a tough background. It was like a testament to passion, to drive, and importantly, how that helps you overcome insecurities, doubts, fears.
The self-doubt mention. That feels key.
It really is. They explicitly said self-doubt is often the main thing holding people back from chasing dreams or hitting goals.
Yeah.
And this film, for them, was like this powerful counterexample. It showed determination breaking through those internal barriers. It speaks to that universal fight with confidence, you know?
Definitely. And seeing someone else push through their own battles, internal and external, that's inspiring. It sounds like what psychologists call grit or resilience.
Exactly that. Perseverance, passion for long-term goals, despite the setbacks.
So from that very specific inspirational documentary, the chat then broadened out to other TV, like game shows. What was the take there?
Quite a positive view, actually. They felt there weren't too many game shows,
Okay.
that there was enough for everyone, kind of spread across different types. And interestingly, they saw them as mostly educational.
Educational and very necessary, too, I think they said. That's a strong claim for game shows.
It is, yeah, necessary. Why? Well, they felt game shows do two things. They provide educational content, but they also remind people to have fun. Like, don't take life too seriously. It suggests they value that kind of accessible learning, but also just lightheartedness and, you know, what can feel like a heavy world sometimes.
So it gives game shows a bit more weight than just pure entertainment, like a social function almost.
Sort of, yeah. And the discussion also hit on TV advertising. Did they still see TV as a major news source?
Yes, they did. Still the main way people get news in their country, they felt. An important outlet, especially for breaking news.
Which is interesting, right? In an age where we think digital dominates everything, it shows traditional media still holds a lot of sway in some places.
True. And what about the ads themselves? What kind of products did they notice being advertised most?
Pretty standard stuff, actually. Mostly home products like cleaning things, soaps, maybe beauty products, and also electronic appliances.
Okay, yeah. Detergent and TVs, basically. Seems about right.
Yeah, the staples of TV advertising.
But what about how people watch the ads? Has attention changed?
Big change there, according to them. Attention is not as much as they used to be. Less focused now.
Much less.
No.
They explain that maybe in the past, ads could even be entertaining themselves. But now, people are impatient. It's a fast-paced life.
Right.
They just want to skip ahead, get to the show. They want things quickly.
That sounds exactly like the effects of streaming on demand culture, doesn't it? We're trained to bypass ads, less patience for interruptions.
Absolutely mirrors those broader trends. Changing expectations, driven by technology. We want immediacy.
Makes sense. And one last point on ads. Regulations.
Yes. They felt regulations are very important. Like there should be rules, presumably for fairness, truth in advertising, that sort of thing.
There sounded like a but.
Yeah, the but was they felt these regulations are not followed as much as it should be.
So needing oversight, but seeing a gap in enforcement.
Exactly. Which raises questions about, consumer protection and how effective those regulatory bodies actually are in today's media world.
Wow. So, okay, from a chat that started with just holiday preferences.
Yeah, we've touched on this deep, almost spiritual connection to nature, biophilia, the impacts of urbanization.
The real felt effects of climate change on daily life and work.
Then shifting to media, The power of inspirational stories like Eminem's to fight self-doubt, the surprising view of game shows as educational.
And how advertising attention spans are shrinking, plus questions about regulation.
It's quite a journey from one source.
It really shows how much insight you can pull from seemingly ordinary conversations if you listen closely. Every preference, every little observation can open a door to these much larger patterns shaping our world and, well, us.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How much do our surroundings, both the actual environment and the media we swim in, how much do they shape our views, what we aspire to, what we even think is possible? And amidst all those forces, what role does that basic, stubborn human determination really play in how we navigate it all? Definitely something to mull over.